This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention. It's all right here on The Toss-Up. The Indiana football team just finished its second consecutive 5-7 season with a loss to Purdue. A lot of fans have voiced their concern about the growth of the program, and the voices of doubt have gotten louder over the past couple of weeks. To some, it's harder to remain positive after years of an underwhelming product. It's made even tougher while watching Purdue rise into relevance faster than its freshman star wide receiver blows by the opposing secondary. But you have to look at some of the setbacks too, and not all of them are excuses. The Hoosiers didn't have much depth at a number of positions due to both youth and injuries. This was a normal average season by Indiana standards, but with some below average luck too. So before you jump to conclusions, make sure you're taking everything into account. Hi everybody, this is The Toss-Up. My name is Michael Dugan, and joining me on the panel this week, we have an IUS TV reporter, Griffin Gonzalez, IUS TV's sports director, Austin Matricardi, and the IDS football columnist and early 2000s rock music fan, Cameron Drummond. Guys, thank you for joining me. Cameron, I'll start with you. I know you have a lot to say on this, but what went wrong this season for Indiana above all else?
Well, I think the thing is just we had the expectations, again, of something going right for Indiana, right? We had hope. We had a cool new slogan. We had a nice crop of freshman players. We had all these things kind of building, getting people excited, getting people in the right mood to try and maybe get that 6th win, get maybe even a 7 or 8 win season with a bit of a down year in the Big Ten. And just it all fell flat. It started with Michigan State, continued throughout Big Ten play. I just think that the fan base was more juiced up for the season than the players showed at times, and that's just kind of how things started to unravel and why we're in the position that we're in today.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at what went wrong, where do you want me to start? I'll just pick one thing for the sake of time, but the offense was just not good. Mike DeBord's scheme is flawed in multiple ways that are very detrimental to the personnel that he had, and Peyton Ramsey was just a replacement level quarterback.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Austin on this one. I think the offense was a big issue this year. I think you can look at scheming. But bottom line, you just don't have the offensive skill talent necessary to compete in a division like the Big Ten East. When you're going against Haskins, or you're going against Michigan, you're going against Penn State, you're going against Michigan State year after year, you need a quarterback who can step up and make offense on demand. And our defense got stops when they needed them, and those momentum stops couldn't turn into momentum for the offense, and that's what really hurt the Hoosiers this season.
So what needs to change? If there's a number of things wrong, mainly with the offense like you guys mentioned, what needs to change? Is it a combination of the two? What is it?
For me, it's growth and it's an offensive coordinator. Those are the two things that I think desperately the Hoosiers need to change this offseason. You need somebody who can be more aggressive. I think DeBord is way too conservative to play in the Big Ten East. And moving forward, you need a quarterback who can launch it downfield and who's not scared of getting hit. That's been Ramsey's biggest curse this season. And moving forward, that's what needs to be improved for this Hoosiers team.
I think it's the offensive coordinator. Like I said earlier, Mike DeBord's just not cutting it. His scheme is not working. So even if it's, you go to the bargain bin and you promote Grant Hurd from passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach to offensive coordinator, he has experience coaching under Hugh Freeze on the offensive side of the ball down at Ole Miss. That offense was a little more explosive than this current Hoosier offense. So even if it's just promoting Grant Hurd, make a change at offensive coordinator. If Mike DeBord is still on the sidelines come 2019 for Indiana, it'll be a total disaster.
Hugh Freeze needs a job.
Hugh Freeze does need a job, and
we're not going down that path.
Someone who already has a job, you have to look no further than Indiana's running game. You got Mike Hart right there. We've talked about how this team has, gotten better at certain positions. Running back is certainly one of those. Stevie Scott wasn't even supposed to be the starter this year. He's obviously turned out to be a phenomenal find, phenomenal growth. We saw what Mike Hart was able to do last year with Morgan Ellison as well during his lone season at Indiana. So there's a guy who can instantly kind of promote to the offensive coordinator role, because I agree with you guys, not to be beating the drum again, but I think Mike DeBoer's way too conservative. We've seen too many limitations in the way he calls plays matched up with the lack of skill and talent Indiana has compared to the other teams, not only in the Big Ten East, but across the Big Ten, especially as we see the growth that's going on up north in West Lafayette.
So you all kind of hinted at the same thing, but Austin and Griffin, I want to focus on what you said. Just a quick follow-up here. What makes you so certain that the issue lies within the scheme in Mike DeBoer and the coaching staff compared to what the quarterback and the offensive scheme are capable, or the offensive personnel, are capable of doing?
I think you see it in game planning. Week to week, it seems like that first quarter is when you really need to establish yourself offensively, and Indiana never did. You never saw an Indiana team come out this season and not have to make major adjustments and able to stay in the game. And to me, that's not just having not a good enough quarterback or receivers or running back or an offensive line. That's game planning, and that's all on DeBoer. And when you look at the pay salaries, DeBoer is getting as much as Allen, which tells me that the offensive coordinator at Indiana University is the head coach of the offense. So for me, it's game planning, and that all lies on DeBoer's shoulders. And I think Ramsey might have potential as a quarterback, especially in the Big Ten. But in order to have potential, you need to have a coordinator who's going to coach him up and know how to use him the right way. And that's just not Mike DeBoer.
For me, in the passing game, you just have to look at the route patterns. You've got guys running to the flats a lot. You've got guys on button hooks a lot. You've got guys on mesh routes a lot. And you're not seeing forward motion with guys. You're not able to hit guys in stride moving toward the end zone. You'll see a lot of guys just standing around in the flats. That's great if you want to get 4 yards. But if it's 3rd and 9, that's not going to do anything for you.
And another thing to add is you hear it all the time in quarterbacks when they're coaching them up. You want to throw to where the receiver's going to be, not to where they are. And when I see Ramsey, very rarely do you see a throw to where the receiver's supposed to be. It's always thrown right to the chest when he's stopped coming back for the football. That's really easy for defenses to tip away, and it's really easy to create turnovers there. So that's a huge issue, and that's coaching and Ramsey's fault on that one.
And another thing that I'd like to add is that if you look at S&P Plus, which is the most well-recognized advanced statistic for college football, IU's rushing offense was much more effective than its passing offense this year. There's a good reason for that. But you would see at times Stevie Scott would just disappear. He just wouldn't get carries. Stevie Scott in the Purdue game starts off a drive with a 14-yard run, and then they don't go back to him for the rest of the drive, including 3rd and short and 4th and short. That's coaching. That's not on the players. That's not Stevie Scott's fault. That's not Peyton Ramsey's fault. You have to go to your workhorse back if he's producing.
Let's talk about the coaching, but the flip side. What's a positive that we can take away from this season from Tom Allen or just the coaching staff as a whole? Cameron, you start.
I mean, there's honestly not a ton to go with there. I do want to kind of focus back on Mike Hart. Again, you saw continued development in the running back. I think, as you mentioned earlier, Austin, Grant Hurd has done a good job with receivers year in and year out in Indiana. He gets them young. He's able to grow them. They're running the right patterns. Ramsey, just as you mentioned, Griffin, doesn't kind of have the arm strength, or maybe doesn't have the recognition when he's back there. Maybe he doesn't even have the time because of how bad the offensive line plays at times to get the ball to them. I think we didn't see as much of a decrease on defense as I expected this year because so much talent was lost from the 2017 team. We saw Casey Teagard come in, do a decent job in the secondary as well with some very limited pieces. So basically everyone but the 2 guys in charge, I think, did an at least okay job in terms of coaching.
The one positive from Tom Allen and the coaching staff for me is probably going to have to be recruiting, which is kind of sad because nothing on the field is going to outdo that for me. You look at the staff that's bringing in 2 guys that are 4-star recruits next year with Samson James and Bo Robbins, 2 guys from the Indianapolis area. I think that that's a pretty positive thing, and unfortunately for the Hoosiers, that's probably the most positive thing the coaching staff has done all year.
I'm taking a very different route.
Let him have it, Griffin.
Hey, listen, I will jump on board with Mike DeBoer is the issue. But when I look at this team, I kind of like to look, especially at head coaching, because at head coaching is, in my opinion, a big leadership role. I like to look outside just in game. And talk to any football player on this campus. You won't find one who can say a bad thing about Tom Allen. And in my opinion, when you can have a team that can get behind a guy, it's so important to retain him and keep him, in my opinion, because that's a hard thing to do, especially in football when you have to please 60-plus athletes. And I think he's not a great offensive-minded coach. I think defensively, his impact was felt from the day he stepped on this campus. And I think, you know what? He's not an Urban Meyer. He's not a Nick Saban. So IU fans need to stop expecting him to be that. But what he can bring is he can bring an energy, and he can bring a program that players will buy into and what recruits will buy into. And I think, like Austin said, his recruiting has been a strength. So for me, Tom Allen this season's biggest plus has been his ability to get people to buy into Indiana football and want to become part of it. Now, in 2 years, if that's not the case and there's no growth, then yes, I do believe there's a discussion that needs to be had about Tom Allen's job performance overall. But right now, I think he's doing what he can with what he has, and I'm just kind of excited to look forward to hopefully getting a new offensive coordinator, but also seeing Tom Allen take this team to where Tom Allen wants to take it.
Well, Griffin, you talked about the buy. let me hop on this first.
Okay.
Let me go first.
I'll
You
go
can back
after
me
you.
up after
Okay.
this, right? Griffin, you talk about the buy-in, talk about players, not want to say a bad thing about their coach. But where is the buy-in if they're back at a 5-7 season? Where's the buy-in if they've regressed from the point at which he took over this team? Some talent has left, some talent has come. Obviously, you don't want the off-field issues that you had with Kevin Wilson as the head coach. But just because guys aren't going to say a bad word about Tom Allen doesn't mean anything to me because of the fact that they're 5-7. There are times this season where it looks like they just didn't care about the team. You come out, you go down, 31-9 to start at Minnesota. That's not a sign of a team that's willing to play for their coach. That's the sign of a team, to me, that's going to leave their head coach out to dry where they go out there and don't perform in a must-win game. There have been too many instances in the past 2 years, not just this year, all the way going back to 2017, the Maryland game and specifically, where you have guys not going out there, not giving their all for this coaching staff and specifically for the guy in charge. You're talking about being able to rally around Tom Allen. They're not showing it on the field, so where are they showing it?
Oh, is it my turn now?
I'm just sitting down. You guys take it from here.
You could talk about the energy that Tom Allen brings and the buy-in and all of that and blah, 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 and he's such a great leader. And
He kicked the trash can. That's great. We love that.
No, that was great, and I do believe that there is an energy and a buy-in and a love for Tom Allen. It means squat if this team doesn't make the postseason. I mean, if you go 5-7 year in and year out, what does that do for you? Hey, this coach is a great guy, but he can't actually win games. And then you look at it also, and sure, he's a great leader, but his team is out there making stupid penalties week in and week out. They're undisciplined. It's not a sign of good leadership, in my opinion.
Let me ask you guys this, and then we're going to cut to break. Is the CEO as a head coach mixed with capable, creative, and innovative coordinators is a model that a lot of teams are following now, and I think it's going to get more popular throughout the college football landscape going forward. Is that something that Indiana should experiment with, in your opinion, or move toward, in your opinion, under Tom Allen? Griffin, I think I know your answer to this, so you could keep it brief. But you guys that seem to be on the other side of that conversation, what do you think?
Go ahead, Austin.
I don't know necessarily if Tom Allen is capable of being that CEO type. I think that he is a great defensive mind. He is one of the best defensive minds in the country, I believe. If he hadn't gotten this job as the head coach at Indiana, he could have very easily ended up as a defensive coordinator in the SEC, the Big 12, etc. He could have gotten a very good job that way. But I don't know if he's quite capable of being the Urban Meyer type that's kind of above everybody else and runs the program and does it at a high level year in and year out. That's my one concern. I think that he is more than capable as a defensive coach. He's proven that he can recruit, but I don't know if he's fully capable of being that CEO type.
Give me a condensed version of your answer.
We already know the answer to this question. You're talking about having a creative, explosive type coordinator situation. Tom Allen said after the Purdue loss this year that he's considering losing the defensive coordinator title to focus on being the head coach. That takes away his biggest skill set, which is being able to create these defensive schemes that lets Indiana with less skill do more on defense. His lone hired offensive coordinator came when he was hired and he put Mike DeBoer in charge. That tells you all you need to know about how adventurous he's willing to get on offense.
Do you have a response?
Yeah, I don't think Mike DeBoer's the guy. And I think until you try something else, you really can't judge him. He's not an offensive-minded coach. He's the head coach. So that CEO position, I think, is perfect for him because I think in college football where there's so many players, so many positions, so many games, you need to be able to divvy it up to other guys. That's where the offensive coordinator for IU needs to be a great hire. I would say take a blank check and give it to the best offensive coordinator in the country because that's what you need to come in to fix this program and save Tom Allen's job, per se, right now.
All right, well, we need to cut to break, so let's do that. But coming up after the break, our panel will discuss, we're going to give out report cards, and we're going to do our lightning round. So stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking IU football here, but before we continue, let's toss it over to Jack Grossman at the Media Wall. Jack?
Thanks, Michael. While it was another disappointing fall in Bloomington with the Hoosiers finishing 5-7 for the second consecutive season, there is plenty of reason to hope for improvement in 2019. And it all starts in the Hoosier backfield. This season, freshman running back Stevie Scott went from being an unknown recruit to an honorable mention on the All-Big Ten team. Scott rushed for over 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns in his initial campaign, including huge starts and ends to the season. Scott's highs included rushing for an almost IU freshman record 204 yards against Virginia in the second game of the year and followed it up with a 114-yard and two-score performance against Ball State. Scott was also effective in Big Ten play. In IU's last 5 games, all against conference foes, the New York native averaged 116 yards per contest, good for 5.2 yards per carry. The freshman's best came just a few weeks ago in Ann Arbor, where Scott rushed for 139 yards and a score against Michigan, who had one of the top rushing defenses in the FBS this season. But the Hoosier backfield goes deeper than Scott. Ronnie Walker will be back for his sophomore campaign. While the Virginia native underwhelmed as a freshman with just 32 carries in 2018, the former 4-star recruit was one of the top 25 running backs in the country in last season's freshman class. However, Walker will not be the most heralded tailback in Bloomington next year. That honor will go to Avon star Samson James, who is the 10th highest rated running back in the 2019 class. James decided to head to Bloomington in mid-October when he flipped his commitment from Ohio State to the Hoosiers. Ironically, the decision was made less than 24 hours after Ohio State crushed the Hoosiers 49-26 in Columbus. Indiana will have a lot of talent on offense next season, whether it be at running back or at other positions such as super utility man Reese Taylor, receivers Nick Westbrook and Donovan Hale among others, and a hopefully fully healthy Michael Penix at quarterback. But it all begins in the backfield, where running back U has returned. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Jack. All right, guys, whether we like it or not, it is report card season. Finals are 2 weeks away. So let's dish out some report cards to the IU football team. Cameron, I'll start with you. Peyton Ramsey gets what?
I'll give him a solid C+. I think that he started out the year, you saw his limitations, especially when he was sharing time with Michael Penix there in the backfield. You had to lean on Stevie Scott in certain games. The Virginia one comes to mind. But I think as the season went on, he did get better. We saw his escapability, the way he's able to use his legs, as an advantage, especially in that Michigan game. But you still saw what he can't do against Purdue, so C+ for me.
Yeah, Peyton Ramsey is the kid in class that's really nice. People like him a lot. He's probably the most improved student in the class. I'll give him a C+ as well.
I'm going C here. There's a lot to be desired with Ramsey this season. I wish he would have been more aggressive. I think he's too scared of getting hit. And at the end of the day, he didn't get the job done on the offensive side. And as the offensive leader on the field, I think he needed to do so. So, yeah.
What about the running back group?
Running back, I really like Stevie Scott. I would like to see more from the backup guys to Stevie, but I think Stevie did a fantastic job really expanding his freshman year. I'm giving Stevie Scott an A+.
The running backs are like the kids that are like over in the corner and they're kind of quiet, but when you actually the teacher calls on them, they know what they're doing. So I'll give them a B. I think they had a pretty solid season overall. They just didn't get used enough.
Yeah, I'll give him a B+. Stevie Scott was the best player on this Indiana team. Ronnie Walker Jr. didn't get enough opportunities, I think, to show what he could do. But also the fact that Mike Majette was their best pass blocking back and their best pass catching back knocks everyone down about a grade and a half for me.
It's worth noting that they were without their leading rusher last year, and no Cole Guest again cannot stay healthy with his knee. The wide receiver group, Cameron, what grade?
I mean, that's such a difficult one to evaluate because is it them doing something wrong, or is it the fact that they didn't get Michael Penix Jr. for the whole season in bits and spurts, or the fact that Peyton Ramsey can't find them when they're streaking wide open down the field? Nick Westbrook grew into his role as the year went on. Whop Philly couldn't stay healthy. Those were the two best receivers, so it's a really interesting B- for me.
If everybody is doing a group project between Ramsey and the running backs and the wide receivers. The wide receivers are the kids that are doing all of the work and getting none of the credit. I think that they're a very talented group. They have a lot of diversity, a lot of depth, but they just get underutilized. So it's not really their fault that they didn't have a great season, because they were clearly talented enough to be much more impactful than they ended up being. I'll give them a B+.
See, I'm going C+ here. I think, I think a lot of it is on the Mike DeBoer era, not being utilized right. I love this look. But I think a big issue is they did have drops. They made a lot of mistakes, and there wasn't a lot of Shane Wynn. There wasn't a lot of Latimer. And I feel like those guys have that athleticism. They have that potential. They have that skill set. You didn't see that from Westbrook. You didn't see that from Wap. You didn't see that from Hale. They started off strong. Wap started off extremely strong. Where'd they go? Where did the passing game go? And I think that's kind of what we missed from the Wilson era of IU football. We missed the aggressiveness down the field. Yeah, we go 3 and out, but we go 3 and out with Sudfeld throwing 50 yards down. Like, that's kind of what we missed. So I'm going to go C+. I'll edge on the B-. If they come to me for a little extra bonus points, I'll give them the B and round it up.
Let's go from 4 men to 11. The defense, how were they?
Oh, goodness gracious, where do you start with them? The Minnesota game is literally the only thing that has to be in your memory, and watching Javon Burgess fall down on the crucial play to allow a long-distance touchdown to end. So many blown coverages in the secondary. You saw one of their best players, Marcelino Ball, get dragged 15 yards into the end zone to seal the loss against the Boilermakers. The coaching didn't help, but the performance on the field left so much to be desired. D+.
The defense is like the kids who only show up for exams in college. They skip lecture, and then they know they have the exam circled on their calendar, and they show up on that day, and then they don't get a good grade because they weren't in lecture. So the defense gets like a D just because they were bad. Nate Stanley threw for 6 touchdowns. Is
that it?
Yeah, it was just 6 for Nate
like
Stanley.
more than that.
Nate Stanley's good, but he's not 6 touchdowns in a game good. You got the Minnesota game that Cam talked about, where they let a guy that was making his first collegiate start
At home in the rain.
At home in the rain, that lost his job in preseason to a walk-on, looked like he was a competent quarterback, and it just basically sums up the entire season. They were not good. D.
I'm going to sum it up by this. When they did what they were supposed to do when everyone expected them, but on big plays where it cost the game, I'm giving them an F. Quarterback escaping on a 3rd and 15, gets the first down. That's an F play.
They allowed a 75-yard jet sweep to Michigan State with the game on the line.
F play. Let's see, Minnesota, F play. But I think you did see sights of this young defense, might I add, where they were able to show, wow, this team's very good and has potential. You saw that for the first time ever, you saw the defense giving momentum to the offense, which I haven't seen in IU football in a few years. So that was kind of refreshing, but still much to be desired on the defensive and offensive side of the ball.
All right, let's put a bow on this. The coaching staff, go.
I think just based on how ineffective Tom Allen and Mike DeBoer were in their very crucial roles, it really undermines any kind of credibility or any kind of solid job done by anyone who's underneath them in the coaching tree. You're only as good as your head coach, and especially for Indiana this season, you're only as good as your offensive coordinator, D-.
The coaches, we're going to call them like the student government. Tom Allen's the class president. Mike DeBoer is the VP, but for some reason he's over in the corner eating paste. You got Grant Hurd, he's the secretary, so on and so forth. But I think that at the top there were a lot of struggles. I think if you look at guys like Mike Hart, who's your treasurer and your secretary, I think that they did very well. So as a group, I'll give them a C-.
I'm going Hagan and Allen and the defensive coaches and Hart. I'm giving them a B, just a fat B right there, not minus, not plus, because there's room for improvement. But they also did a great job recruiting. I think Hagan should be considered one of the top recruiters in the country. Just a really good job overall. Mike DeBoer gets F for fired.
Wow. All right, it's time for the lightning round. Moving on to the lightning round.
Please.
Your answers have to be 10 seconds or less. You guys know that. You've been here before.
We're not going to do that anyway, so it's fine.
No, it's enforced this time. IU is just fine under Tom Allen in 10 seconds or less. Yes or no?
No. That's less than 10 seconds, right?
That's less than 10 seconds.
Maybe. Next year's going to tell everything.
Talk to me in 2 years.
Okay, those weren't very good answers, so I'm going to make you elaborate. 10 seconds or less, elaborate on your answer.
I think Tom Allen's shown for 2 years, the first 2 years, he's not able to take momentum from what was a decent program and continue it. He's shown a lack of ability to build up his own momentum. Breakthrough and finish hasn't happened, so I don't know what word he's going to choose next year. Maybe disappointment, reluctance, stubbornness, losses. There's nothing positive to indicate to me that this team is going to be better next year under Tom Allen than they were this year or the year before it or 2 years from now or 3 years from now or 4 years from now where hopefully he's on a beach in Mexico somewhere.
That was longer than 10 seconds.
Yeah, that
by the
was.
way.
I realize that.
I think that the inability to identify offensive talent and utilize it to the best of its capability has shown that Indiana's not just fine at the moment.
You're a defensive coach who inherited an offensive-minded team. It's going to take time to get your system going, get your players going, get your recruits going. So for me, I'm waiting for that era to take over. And if that doesn't take over in 2 to 3 years, then the question is no, he's not.
All right. I'm going to leave you last for this one because I know you'll need some time to think. 10 seconds or less, give me one big positive thing that we can look forward to going into next year.
I'm going to go the youth is going to grow, and it's going to be really exciting to see what guys come back and grow and what guys come back and kind of don't. I think it's going to be really cool to see how freshmen come in next year, and I think Mullen is going to be fantastic. I love his tweeting already, talking about how we're going to win the bucket next year already. So really exciting to see that.
Mike Penix, Stevie Scott, Reese Taylor. That's it.
I think if they find a way to use Reese Taylor in a useful way, he's a really big exciting factor. I would love for him to be on kick returns and punt returns, especially to replace Ja'Shawn Harris, who gave this team some incredible years of service. Reese Taylor may end up being the only reason to buy a ticket to an Indiana football game next year, but especially if they're not priced at $70.
Wow.
You mentioned Mike Penix, Austin. Griffin, I'll start with you here. Assuming a healthy and successful rehab for him, who should start at QB week 1?
Who cares? Because that summer workout is going to be competitive. And I think when you have two great quarterbacks who could arguably make a case for starter, both of which are going to get better during those summer workouts. So I'm actually excited to see that because now both are going to get better through those workouts.
I need a name.
Penix.
Mike Penix. He's the more talented quarterback. He's the quarterback with more eligibility left. I think it's an easy choice.
Now, Griffin, you say, who cares? I care, especially because of the fact that we saw how badly Peyton Ramsey could limit this team in certain situations this year. If Peyton Ramsey is the quarterback, Indiana's going to have to get to like the 30-yard line to throw Hail Marys at the end of the game. So Michael Penix Jr. has shown tremendous maturity for his age in his limited time, assuming that the ACL rehab goes as planned. Michael Penix Jr.
If it's 30 yards, is it actually a Hail Mary? I feel like that's just a regular pass.
Well,
In the
for
Mike
Peyton Ramsey,
DeBoer
it's not.
aggressive offensive game plan, yes, that is a Hail Mary.
All right, it's the end of the show. It's time for last word. You get to pick one word. Hopefully this one can stay under 10 seconds. One word on this year's IU football season, Griffin.
Oh, man. Much to be, oh, gosh, can't.
That's not one
That's
word.
so many words.
Desirable.
Headache.
Familiar.
Okay. Good to see you can boil that down to one word at the end. That does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.